Welcome back to CIEgroup.com. You join us over at ISE 2024 in Barcelona. And of course, CIE cannot be at the show without joining our partners in the audio world, is Interem, of course. I'm joined by our very own Ashley Wilson to talk about the latest audio technologies. Interem, really well known in the commercial market for 100-volt line and low impedance, of course. And now the latest technology in audio over IP is now available from Interem. Ashley, let's talk about 100-volt line and low impedance. It's not gone away, of course, but now we're adding that third technology in audio over IP. What's the difference? What's the cable infrastructure? And why are we transitioning towards IP in the background music market?
Of course. So when you think about 100-volt line, it's an awful lot of cable runs that you need to run. Whereas with Ethernet, in a lot of new buildings, the Ethernet's already been put in there. So it means that you can run this over Ethernet and expand that.
So we can use standard Ethernet cable infrastructure, first of all. Controllability and zone control and expandability are some of the key factors of an IP system. So why is that so important, particularly to a larger system?
Of course. So when you're talking about IP, you are right. You're talking about additional zones. Traditionally with analog, you've got your set zones, and if you want to add additional zones, it means potentially purchasing new kit. With IP, you've got the system already, you're just adding on additional IP speakers, putting in an additional zone, and you're off you go. It's really easy.
And when we talk about controllability and zone control, as with any IP products, of course, you don't need to be on site to control that system. You don't need to be on site to change settings or to service a product. So let's talk about the difference maybe between a large 100-volt line rack, which needs to be on site, and the difference between that and servicing and setting up an IP system.
Of course. So when you think about a large system, you're talking potentially 24U, big massive rack in the system, and you've got, your twisty noddles and turns, turn that zone up, turn that zone down. Whereas with an IP system, it's all done on a web base. So that interface could be done, remotely. It could be on site as well as, but it means you're literally just clicking a zone and hiring that up and down rather than having to go to that rack on site each time just to make minor adjustments.
And the level of zone control it increases exponentially, really. So in order to add additional zones on an analog system requires more hardware, more kit, whereas with an IP system, it doesn't have to be a per amplifier zone, of course. You can go right down to the individual speaker that individual endpoint is.
Yeah, exactly that. So when you were talking about 100 volt, it's rewiring, potentially different relaying as well in the back, reconfiguration essentially. Whereas with IP, it's almost plug and play almost. You add it into your Ethernet, you're then setting the kit up, selecting a zone, and then you're away.
So you can see behind us, we're actually looking at the user interface. And when we talk about a standard analog PA system, really that user interface is stood at the rack, if you like, and literally twisting knobs on an amplifier. Now, a user interface within an IP system gives you that controllability from a screen, from a PC, in effect. And that really changes the way that the property user, the end user, or the installer, whoever's servicing that system, is going to interact with the system.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know about you, but I'm quite a visual person. So, you've put me in front of one of these racks, it might take me 20, 30 minutes just to figure out which button and which zone that is. Whereas with the IP system, you're logging in, everything's labelled, you've got a bird's eye view of the system, and it's very easy to pick up and press buttons to adjust that system.
And I guess we've talked a little bit about expandability, but let's say that we've got a building, it has 20 zones on it. If we were to take that as an analog system, we've probably got to add an additional rack, one might expect, taking up more physical room. With a digital system, we really can just add more speakers, add more endpoints, and add that to the network. It makes things so much quicker and so much more efficient.
Yeah, exactly. When you're thinking about 100 volt, you've got to think about the amplifiers that you're putting in the location. You've also got to think about all the speaker wiring as well to support all of that. Whereas with an IP system, it's your main controller with then potentially transmitters and receivers, depending on how much you're putting over the network, and then just your IP speakers within a group.
Now, certainly within the commercial audio sector, there has been a reticence to move towards IP because of cost. And often one of the problems here is that we measure it based on a single ceiling speaker price. And of course, the difference between a 10-watt standard 100-volt line ceiling speaker and an IP ceiling speaker is very different. So how can we measure those costs, and when does it become cost effective to move towards IP?
Of course. So I think installers need to think about the total cost of things. So it's not only about your speaker, it's not only about your amplifier, it's more about everything. So how much cable you need, how long that's going to take your installer to install that cable. Actually, if the cable run's already been done for an Ethernet by a third party potentially, then you can then use that to your advantage rather than having to rewire to each speaker.
So the future of audio is going to be IP. We're already seeing it certainly in the pro market with of course platforms such as Dante. We're now seeing it more and more in the commercial sector as well. If you want to find out more about the Inter-M IP range and of course audio over IP technology, contact CIE Group, contact your account manager, and we'll bring all the latest information on IP audio to you from CIEgroup.com.